Good evening. We are broadcasting from Ananda, Bangalore. My name is Nayaswami Haridas, and it's a joy to be with you this evening. We'll begin by reading from Living Wisely, Living Well by Swami Kriyananda. Never accept an idea merely because others endorse it. As long as you are true to yourself and your understanding of what is right and wrong, it won't matter if, in other people's eyes, you seem quaint or passé. The road to truth can sometimes be quite rough, but it leads towards ever-increasing clarity. The smooth highway of popularity, on the other hand, meanders through dense fogs of delusion into deeper and deeper darkness. And this is a reading from Affirmations for Self-Healing by Swami Kriyananda on moral vigor. Lack of moral vigor zaps the will and makes the intellect sponge-like, ready to absorb the prevalent opinion of the times. People with good intellects often suffer from the Hamlet complex, the inability to come to any decision or to commit oneself to anything. They justify their indecision by saying, "I want to be fair to all sides." But even an imperfect action is better than no action at all. When you believe in something, stand by it. When you believe in someone, stand by him. Such loyal self-commitment is a higher law than seeing all sides. Energy is needed to accomplish anything in life. With moral vigor, all things are possible, but without it, the end of every act is failure. And let's affirm together. The decisions that I make in life come from within myself, from my sense for what is right. I am committed to the truth and to channeling outward to the world. And again, the decisions that I make in life come from within myself, from my sense for what is right. I am committed to the truth and to channeling it outward to the world. A little quieter. The decisions that I make in life come from within myself, from my sense for what is right. I am committed to the truth and to channeling it outward to the world. And now whispering, the decisions that I make in life come from within myself, from my sense for what is right. I am committed to the truth and to channeling it outward to the world. And repeating silently to yourself as I say aloud, the decisions that I make in life come from within myself, from my sense for what is right. I am committed to the truth and to channeling it outward to the world. Swami Kriyananda had the incredible good fortune to be with Yogananda for the last 3.5 years of Yogananda's life. And during one occasion, which is very well known at Ananda, the famous Beverly Hills garden party, Yogananda spoke so forcefully about starting a community. And Swami had mentioned there in his autobiography, The Path, that it really was quite unusual because the crowd of about 200 people were not prepared for what Swami Kriyananda said was simply the most powerful speech he had ever heard, with Yogananda talking about the importance of what he called World Brotherhood colonies. Well, at that time, though Swami Kriyananda was just a young man in his early 20s, he vowed that he would do what he could to help Yogananda realize this dream in his own life. And so it was in the mid-60s in San Francisco, Northern California, Swami Kriyananda felt that it was time to talk to people about Yogananda's dream that he cherished so deeply within his heart, World Brotherhood colonies. And so Swami Kriyananda, and I believe Nayaswami was there too, spoke to a group of people, about 25, about the importance of starting community, and that he himself wanted to begin this project and would others want to join him. And there was so much resistance in talking about this that Swami Kriyananda said smilingly, the only thing he could think of at that time, because he thought that this group obviously was not ready for this great leap of faith starting spiritual community. But he said all I could do was just serve snacks. That was it, and call it good. But as it turned out, he was extremely committed to this vision of World Brotherhood colonies. And in 1967, as it turned out, he bought the first property, what we call the seclusion retreat. And from there, the village followed a couple years later. And that was the beginning of spiritual community there in Northern California. Well, I had a very interesting experience related to this. At the Expanding Light, the retreat facility there in Northern California, I would often get on the phone and make phone calls to see if people were interested in coming to the retreat, and perhaps I could help them in any questions they might have and so forth. And so this one particular time, and I would make hundreds of these calls, there was a time when this woman answered the phone. And I said, hello, my name is Haridas, and I'm from the Expanding Light here in Ananda Village, and I wanted to see if you were interested in coming to this particular retreat. And all of a sudden, she gasped. And I didn't know quite what to think, and there was a moment or two of silence there on the phone. And then she said, this is Ananda? And I said, yes. He said, oh, Swami Kriyananda realized his dream. And as it turned out, she was just a teenager, maybe even not that, when she went with her parents to one of these satsangs, one of the meetings there in San Francisco in the early years where Swami Kriyananda had an apartment prior to the development of Ananda, when he was talking about this vision. And she was so struck. And then, as Divine Mother would have it, many years later, I was there at the Expanding Light on staff and talking to this woman. And as it turned out, she was the same person that I had talked to many years prior. And so we had a wonderful conversation. And I was always struck by the divine coincidence of me talking to this woman initially and having her just so thrilled, because not all dreams are realized. We know that. And this dream of dreams, so ambitious, because as Swami Kriyananda used to joke, he said communities back in the 60s, and there were many of them, all throughout the US and I think the world too, he said they lasted 1 month. And that was because at the end of the month, rent was due. Everyone disappeared. And that was it. They weren't interested in having to actually, put out some energy. In the early years at Ananda, I saw Swami Kriyananda challenged many times, where Jyotish would joke that the only thing that was needed if you wanted to be a member of Ananda was to come to the entrance and chant Om, and then you were welcome. Obviously, it was a joke. We had, in times, we developed guidelines for members and training programs and all those kinds of things, because we wanted to make sure that this important step of joining a community was something that they really felt in their heart was the right thing for them to do. And so Ananda is, and to this day, we just celebrated our 50th anniversary, as I'm sure you know, is really quite amazing in its ability, in the people's ability to balance the need to be an individual, as Swami Kriyananda used to say. At Ananda we draw original people. At one point, I think it was in the 70s, I counted, or someone counted, 40 different countries represented. Phenomenal. And all these original and unique people. And yet, the power as it is today is that people stand alone, and yet at the same time, our theme song, after all, is Walk Like a Man and so forth, to stand alone, to have that moral vigor, to be true to yourself, and at the same time balanced with, and it takes humility of course, to be a part of the entire experience. As it says in the Bible, where two or more are gathered, there I am in the midst of them. And so satsang, the importance of community, so very, very important. And now, of course, we have many different communities around the world because people recognize that this experience is a true experience and can help to facilitate people's growth. And so whether it's community in the form of a meditation group, which we have, about 100 around the world, or the community experience through center activity or through church activity, or in community itself, perhaps in a rural or a city environment, one is able to appreciate that very important lesson that Yogananda was very strong, that he didn't want yes men around him. But some people take that to mean that, okay, they'll only follow the intuition, their own intuition, and they will block out any other input. That's a grave mistake. One needs the intuition in order to know oneself on such a deep level that one is complete open, and it really takes a childlike and humble spirit to be willing to receive with intuition, with common sense, with past experience, people's opinions and comments and so forth. And in that way, then Ananda has flourished, because people know it's so important to have the moral courage to stand alone and to follow your own light, but at the same time that we're in a collective experience. And this collective experience is far more powerful, as Swami Kriyananda has pointed out, than if one person was somewhere, unless of course they were a saint like Babaji, but some, quote-unquote regular person meditating away. The impact that that individual would have, although they're doing something important too in meditation and so forth, compared to the many, many experiments, you might call them, community experiments on all the various levels where people are banding together to create this magnetism, this very attractive magnetism, to help draw people that feel in tune with this particular path, or to find inspiration for their own path. And we find that it really is a lot of fun. As Swami Kriyananda was asked one time, the mission of Ananda, there was perhaps hundreds, thousands of people he was speaking to at the time, what's the mission of Ananda? And he said so simply, just to have fun with joy. And so the joy comes by being true to yourself. And it's not easy, as in these readings we heard, that it's not always easy. It can be very tough to move along forward on your path, and at the same time know that God is going to test us, and that's, of course, important for our own soul growth. Speaking of testing, many years ago, Swami Kriyananda invited, this was in the early 70s, about 24 of us to come to Reno in Northern California, Nevada area, and give satsangs. And so we were on radio and television, and of course he gave a large public talk, and all of these things. And at one particular time, I don't know where the idea came from, but it made me shake in my boots. It was, let's go chant in front of nearby Safeway. And I thought, maybe I can get a cold and I can skip out and not have to attend, or maybe I can come up with some excuse, but I couldn't. So I thought, well, just go and see what it's like. If not, you'll have a good story. And so off I went, and I remember that my mantra at the time, chanting, 25 of us, in front of Safeway, a commercial market, was so challenging for me. All I could do to comfort myself is to say, because we had Safeways in Los Angeles where I was raised, and they're all over. I'm glad I'm not in my hometown. I'm glad I'm not in my hometown. And I just kept on repeating that to myself. I probably did that more than actually chanting for all I knew. And then praying in addition that no one, you know how it is sometimes, someone will come completely out of the blue that you know. And all of a sudden there they are saying, oh my God, what is this? Don't I know that person? It didn't happen. And I survived the experience. But I thought to myself, prior to going there and during and certainly reflecting on the experience afterwards, that these experiences on the spiritual path are important for us. And it doesn't mean that we have to necessarily all go out now and chant in front of the local market in order to learn moral courage, and can we stay in our center, in our spines, and at peace doing these things. We don't have to come up with these things. They just come. Divine Mother is an expert at finding ways to challenge us to see if we will stand firm, as Yogananda said, amidst the crash of breaking worlds. It's very, very important. And as we are able to develop this sense of center and this sense of dharma and this sense of integrity, then more and more we feel that we don't want to go looking for trouble in order to test our resolve to be firm in our commitment to truth. But at the same time, if it does come, and it feels like it's something that is our own, then see what we can do. Many years ago, a story perhaps I've shared with some of you, but it's well worth repeating. Again, in the 70s, when Nayaswami Vijay and I had been asked by Swami Kriyananda to start the first center in Sacramento, Northern California, at one point he asked us if we would put together for him a public talk, which we did. And we were very pleased. A couple hundred people came, and that was a large number in those years. Still is, actually. And so as it worked out, much to my horror, I was asked to announce him. And I thought, Vijay loves to be up there and speak. Let him announce him. But for some reason, I don't remember if it was Swami or someone else, they thought, no, I should be the one to announce Swami Kriyananda. And so I did, and I wasn't prepared for the experience. I tried to be prepared, but I wasn't. As they say, the number one fear, at least in America, and perhaps in the entire world, is public speaking. And so my knees were shaking and my voice was shaking, and basically I was incoherent, and I did my best, but it was pretty bad. I might as well just been speaking in a different language. And so after, I was quite shaken by the experience, of course, and I thought, oh my God, here's Swami Kriyananda, and this high soul, and here I am making a fool of myself, trying to let people know what a great privilege it is to have him in our midst. They think, oh my gosh, they should have come up with somebody else. But I always remember, because we all went to someone's home for dinner, a handful of us, and I was in the car in the back seat. And so naturally I said to Swami Kriyananda, I'm so sorry for that. He said, you did fine. And he was absolutely sincere. It wasn't an affirmation. And for many years, really, I still meditate on that, and I'm grateful for his very charitable response. I thought, what was he really saying? And he was saying perhaps that you had the courage to get up there, you did as good as you could, and don't be thinking, it's all directional, don't be thinking about this misstep, just be thinking about, the same as the sinner who never gave up, one step at a time, all of these kinds of things that we all live by that are so important in order for us to stay steady on the spiritual path. And so for us, it's important to meditate on whether it's Jesus Christ who gave up his life because he felt that it was more important to share the truth than to spare his own body. And St. Francis, toward the end of his life, when he was blind and all he wanted was for he and his monks to live the simple life, barefoot, without dwellings and so on, it didn't work out that way. He attracted thousands, and pretty soon there were buildings that were given to them and so on. And toward the end of his life, he was seen on top of one of the roofs, throwing the tiles down in disgust because he did not want this form, because he knew that in time it would crush the spirit or at least create havoc with people's commitment to live the simple life. Because at that time, when he started a new order, it was an enormous departure, a great departure from what was being done at the time. And it was true of Saint Teresa of Avila, who was, again, a great, great saint. And her life was during the life of the Inquisition. And they used to call her the bearded nun. And she was an enormously strong individual, very, very forceful. And she needed to go by her own lights and to reform at that time the monastery because they were, basically starting to drift. And so she came in and again demanded that her nuns live the simple life. And to test her further, she was an ecstatic saint, always going into samadhi. And she wasn't able for some time to get the support that she needed because no one could understand when she talked about the vision that she had of the formless Christ, that consciousness beyond all form, until one of her confessors did an enormous amount of research and found that this indeed was in the scriptures. Because during that time of Kali Yuga, it was all form, the thickest walls that one could have, etc. And so for her to be born at that time and to go through what she went through was quite extraordinary. And so we have the example of the great saints to give us the inspiration to stand by our own truth. But at the same time, though Yogananda said he attracted stubborn people, we always need to balance that out. Is this true? Is this the right way to go? I love the thought of testing along the way. Perhaps we're embarking on a project or whatever it might be. And so we move forward a few steps and then see if this is what God wants. And if not, then we have the strength of character to turn around and retrace our steps and start again. A lot of people will not do that. They'll announce to the world, I'm going to be a doctor, or whatever it might be, and everyone is cheering them forward. And then somewhere along the line, they find it's not really what they feel to do. They want to be a journalist. That's what's in their heart. And as they introspected, they found it was always there. And how many have the strength to buck the opinions of those people that love them and want the best for them, but they have, as often parents do for their children, they're living their lives through them. I want you to be happy as long as you're a lawyer, an engineer, a doctor, all of these things, so that I can, when I'm meeting with my friends, say a little bit about how my, sons and daughters are doing and all of that. Do we really, really want them to be happy? Or is it just a projection of what we want for ourselves in gathering people's opinion and support? So in this world, even in Mother India, the guru of the world, there is this pressure. And it takes a lot of strength, an awful lot of strength to, again, to thyself be true. But that's what we have to do. Because otherwise what happens, and you see people drifting, whether they're young or middle-aged or old, that they weren't able to hold the line. And to hold the line is vital. To hold the line and to continue to have that understanding and that growing awareness that all we want to do is to be instruments. And if God wants us to go this way, fine. He knows what's right for us. But if God all of a sudden seemingly changes his mind, then that's not going to be the case, but still just for fun, then we're willing to go in yet another direction. And so when Swami, I believe, in talking to Yogananda, was concerned, and perhaps it was Yogananda talking to his Guru Sri Yukteswar, about what if I find, I believe it was Swami Kriyananda and Yogananda, Swami Kriyananda saying, but what if I find that at one point then you're wrong? Can I follow you? Because Yogananda was asking for his unconditional love at that time, when Swami first became a disciple in 1948, for his unconditional love and unconditional obedience. So what if I find at one point that you're wrong? And Yogananda said, I'll never ask you anything but that which God asks through me. And with that, then Swami Kriyananda was totally settled within his heart, because he wanted to be true to himself. He knew that he had found a treasure of treasures in Yogananda, and the treasure of being accepted as a disciple. But even at that time, he was very, very concerned that he needed to be true to himself, because he had spent years sorting out what was true and what was not true in the late 40s, where gurus and all those things were not known. He was on his own, and it was extremely, extremely challenging for him. And so he became a real jnani yogi in sorting out that which would feed his spiritual life and that which was of no value, and he would discard it. And that discrimination and that strength of purpose was what, in time, created the magnetism to draw him to that bookstore in New York, where he found the autobiography of a yogi, and then gift of all gifts, was able then to travel from New York to California to meet his guru and to be accepted as a disciple. And so for us, it really does take, as they say, seclusion is the price for greatness. It does take time within, whether it's through meditation and prayer or seclusion, whatever it might be, to make sure that we're staying on track. Do we have that balance where we're able to listen to others and to draw the cream, you might say, from our brother and sister disciples and others in order to help us in going forward, or again from the inner pipings of our own soul? Do we have sufficient detachment that if the inspiration comes from a little child, or if it comes from within, or it comes from a person that we even think is not all that wise, still, we're so keen on God is everywhere, He can speak to us at any time. And let me be open to that. And so, thank God for community, thank God for satsang, thank God for God and the gurus, that they give us the strength through their example, through their joy primarily, to hold on to, as they talk about the spiritual path being the razor's edge. And it is indeed. And as we're able to follow the path, then that joy gets stronger and that love gets stronger. A joy and a love that all we want to do is to share with others. So it's been our joy to be with you this evening, and God bless you.